Wow, that's a lot of views. Since some people loved my previous discussion, and other people hated it, I believe now is a good time to look at my previous video and try explaining my position better before the end of Season 1. It would be improper for me to continue talking about the future episodes of the series if I didn't first start talking about some of the criticisms I got in the first video. My first issue when creating the Superman video lies on the way that I presented the video to my audience. The way that I worded everything made it come off as if I was an avid fan of the character, so whenever I was called out for not knowing some basic Superman facts, it ruined my credibility. For that, I have to apologize. I'm not a super fan of Superman. You like what I did there? I've had some comics read to me years ago on YouTube, watched some of the videos and movies, and watched some of the animated series he was in like Justice League, but that's about it. A more accurate portrayal of my Superman knowledge would be along the lines of a 5 out of 10. I've watched stuff in the past involving the character, but I don't really remember most of it. So, when hearing me critique your favorite character, remember this is how a common viewer of the series, with similar average knowledge of the character, would perceive the series. Now that we got that out of the way, let's see what people hated about my video. To help me do that, I have a viewer who created a well thought out comment listing all of the problems he had with it. It also has a good amount of likes, so it should reasonably reflect what the average consensus is amongst my viewers. I'll read the comment out, then break it down from there. 645. He's referring to when I talked about the "you lied to me" part of the episode. I don't get what you mean there. Wouldn't you be upset if someone misled you in a way that might get you fired? This is not a moment of, "how could you? I thought we were best friends." This is a, "we could get fired for this and I'm mad at you" moment. It was one of the best character moments for Clark too this episode, because he was standing up for himself. The buttons worked completely inconsistently. The robots attacked randomly, irregardless of who activated them or disactivates them. They attack a goon in the start of the episode. In the middle of the episode, they work as intended. I think him becoming a superhero was a result of him moving to the big city and meeting those tech villains in the first episode. It pushed him to find out more about himself and his powers and visit back home to figure out what's going on in the spaceship. Earlier, when he was a kid, he was scared of the ship and his own origins, and maybe he wanted to live a normal, quiet life, and that was the reason why he wasn't a superhero. Or he couldn't control his strength well enough to trust himself to being a hero. The only time he has issues controlling his strength are comedic moments, and never led to him hurting others or breaking object when it wouldn't be inconvenience to the plot, which is odd a bit. All valid points, so let's start with the first part. When referring back to the exchange between Clark and Lois, we can see Clark receiving a call from their boss and threatening to fire them if they didn't head back. This is something that I think does clarify why Clark is acting this way, but their actual exchange is treated in a different way. For example, if you cut out that single line, it is heavily played off that Clark is mad at Lois lied rather than being mad that he might lose his job because of her. This is emphasized even heavier when Lois says, "You wouldn't have helped me if I told you the truth." And Clark replies with, "You didn't give us the chance." He then talks about how he trusts her and how she used him. He never talks about possibly losing his job, only that he trusts her and that trust was betrayed. That's why I made that previous statement. He had just met her earlier that day. Why is he so incredibly surprised a total stranger betrayed him? If he was worried about his job, he would have put more emphasis on possibly losing it. Instead, he focuses solely on, "How could you do this? I trusted you." Imagine if someone did this to you. Would you not say something along the lines of, "You're going to get me fired"? It was played off as such a minute detail I never even realized that was the main reason he was mad. I do agree that was one of the best character moments for Clark this episode. Next, they talk about the buttons working inconsistently from the start. Though they do show the robots attacking whoever is nearby, that example furthers my point of why it was weird they all attacked Superman. Before, the button is pressed and it attacks the nearby person to the button. But during the climax, the button is pressed and it ignores the person who pressed the button and instead immediately goes for some random guy several feet away from them. Some of the robots are even looking at the villain as they come out of the containers, but they completely ignore her. If anything, they should have attacked her just as they attacked the random person in the past. In episode 6, they clarify on the reason behind the robots only attacking Superman. If they would have said something about this in the first episode, then it would have been a little mystery that the viewers could have had revealed to them. Instead, it is revealed to the viewers in a way that we didn't even know this was a mystery in the first place. For example, the robot could have first picked up the villain who activated them, then have a beeping noise that makes them focus on Superman after realizing he was nearby. Maybe even include a robot POV that shows them label Superman as something like Project S detected or something. Really build on that mystery side of things. I know that this all seems like little nitpicks at this moment, but they build on one another. Remember, almost all of the problems I had in the video stemmed from the first episode. If I didn't have as many problems with the first episode, I wouldn't have had enough content to make an 11-minute video. Next, we will be moving over to the Clark becoming a hero after moving to the big city. He didn't become a hero at first because he wanted a quiet life. This is something I completely agree with. After thinking about it a little bit more, that is most likely what they were trying to convey. I do think they could have done this better by having Clark reluctant to using his powers, but in the opening of the episode, he's using them to do menial tasks like saving a kitten stuck in a tree. It would have been cool to see Clark willingly decide to be late for work in order to save the kitten, and finally having him embrace his powers during the climax of the episode to save the person he loves. This would have been a clearer definition of his shift in beliefs from a person wanting to live a quiet life to a person doing good no matter the cost to himself. I do think him being nervous is the reason behind his lack of control on his strength, which I overlooked in my previous watching. The reason I came to that conclusion is because they went from a flashback of him as a kid, just learning his powers, to him as an adult, still having trouble controlling his powers. The transition very much seemed like he's been struggling with this all his life, rather than a "I'm nervous" approach. And with that, I think I covered all the reasons behind my thoughts and conclusions with the show. Oh yeah, I forgot one last thing. The S. If you are an avid Superman fan, then you can like, subscribe, and click off the video, because I will now tarnish your favorite media and enact death threats upon myself. You have been warned. You may be okay with the S on Superman meaning hope and being the coat of arms for House of L, but I will always think the idea of everyone should immediately know that is just stupid. Let's take a short history lesson, shall we? Superman's first appearance in Action Comics #1 showed him with a more police-style badge on his chest while still holding a red S in the center. Since its original concept, the S has always been just an acronym for Superman. This lasted from 1938 till 1978. Then, 40 years later, Richard Donner put Christopher Reeves in the costume and created Superman, the movie. This was, as I could find, the first time they gave the S a meaning different than just his name. They introduced it as the coat of arms for the House of L. In Action Comics #500 and several afterwards, they had his parents design the costume. In others, they have it fashioned from his baby blanket he was found in. The number of different iterations is impossible for me to cover, so let's see why it became the meaning of hope. In 2003, Superman Birthright made the S represent hope, and in 2013, Zack Snyder combined these two concepts and made the S be both the coat of arms and also mean hope. And that's where our story ends. The S can be either the coat of arms, a symbol for hope, both, or none of the above. For example, in More Fun Comics #101, which was released in 1945, it is stated that Superboy was the one who created the S symbol. He says, and I quote, "I chose this symbol not only to stand for Superboy and later Superman, it will also mean saving lives, stopping crime, and giving super aid wherever it's needed." This is the earliest explanation behind why there is an S on his chest, which is later corroborated when they showed Clark as a baby wrapped in a blue blanket revealing no S on the blanket he came in. His suit was originally sewn together using his blanket, and his adoptive mother, in other iterations, was presumably the one who put the S on his chest. The S does not definitively mean it's the coat of arms, and it does not definitively mean hope. Those are just the most recent and popularized changes done to the character of Superman. That's why I think giving the S all these internal meanings is just stupid. The House of L having an S being their coat of arms is ridiculous. They are aliens. Why do they even have a coat of arms? Why does their coat of arms look like a freaking S? Why are we stripping the original meaning down to all these other meanings and combining them into one mass meaning? It's like, oh, I like that concept. Let's combine it with the other concepts I also like. Now, the suit was sewn by his adoptive mother, It represents a coat of arms for the House of L. It also means hope. It also happens to be an S, which stands for Superman, and it just never ends. I don't want this idea to be representative of all Superman media. I'm sure the comics where these concepts were popularized are incredible in their own right. If they weren't, the concept wouldn't have been popularized in the first place. I simply dislike when something that has always been an easy way to represent a character continues to be given deeper and deeper meanings without changing the symbol in the slightest. They know they have to keep the S on Superman or it wouldn't be Superman, but they also want to deepen the character's origins for the sake of an interesting narrative. It's adding the deepest meaning to something that had no deep meaning to begin with. In regards to the S meaning hope, I once again cannot speak to how they did it in the actual comic, but I believe this concept is half right. I don't think they should just say, this means hope in Krypton, but it should become a symbol of hope. Through Superman's actions and the countless times he saves lives, humans should see this symbol as a sign of hope. It is through his actions that they come to that conclusion, not because he is wearing something that means hope in a language that no human understands. This feels like a way more earned title than just saying, actually, in this one comic, it means hope, and in the movie they released almost 50 years ago, it means the House of L, so now all alternative versions of this design also means the same thing. Is disingenuous, each original story, and should be viewed as such. Maybe in My Adventures of Superman, it doesn't mean hope, it means lollipop. Should all future concepts of Superman also mean hope/lollipop? No, because that's stupid. That's why, when looking at this new version of Superman, we should look at it with a fresh mind, not old concepts that every viewer needs to research in order to understand. Imagine if this is the first Superman media a person has ever seen and they see him spawn in with the letter S. They would also think that that was stupid. Why not show it behind his parents on a banner as a little nod to the audience that this means something in Krypton, not just, oh yeah, in volume 178 of Superman, it means this thing. Good thing I did my research before watching this kids show. If anything, they should have made the S on his father's uniform match his S, but instead they didn't do that. So now we have two coat of arms for the House of L. Better write that down, Superman fans. The simplest thing they could have done was either have Clark or his adoptive mother reference on how weird it is he has an S on his chest. They instead don't even acknowledge it, almost as if they also did their research on the character. Clark must have had research material in the ship he arrived in for his parents to read. I'm sure there are avid fans of the movies too. What I'm getting at this whole rant is that we should look at each story as a fresh take, not as research material for future stories. I cannot say whether or not S being the coat of arms or meaning hope is stupid when referring to their respected original stories, because I haven't read them. But what I can say is that I don't like the concept on its own, and when it comes to My Adventures with Superman, nobody should have to see previous iterations of a character, no matter how popular they are, for something to make sense. It's simply bad storytelling. I know I spent a long time on that, but if I'm going to diss an entire community of fans, I want to at least show that I did my research and where I'm coming from. I want nothing to be conceived improperly, and I want nothing to be interpreted improperly. I was planning on talking about the episodes that were recently released in this video, but I'll save that for a later time. Anyway, thank you guys for coming and watching. Please don't kill me. Like and subscribe, and as always, Johnny. Mwah, thank you for letting me know. Mwah. Okay, bye bye, Johnny.